So the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We had an executive committee meeting that was held on April the 29th. And then we had a board meeting held on May 3rd out in advance, so everybody should have had ample time to read them. At this time, I will ask if there are any corrections that need to be made, and if not, if I could have a motion to approve.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Lori has made a motion for approval, and Donnie has second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. With that, we will go to the final adoption of rules, and I will invite John to come up. You will note, those that are in the audience and staff members, that, you know, pre-COVID, we would invite the public or pharmacists to speak at the time we discussed individual topics, and at that time, kind of organically, questions could be asked. During COVID, going Zoom, we put everything at the top. We're going to go back and look at having those individuals testify throughout the agenda, and then I'd like feedback as to which of the two, ways that you would like best. So keep that in mind. So with that, I will turn it over to John.
All right, thank you, Madam President. Links to the lines with edits. Also, for the rules for adoption that you have today, you have received copies of the orders and preambles in the OneDrive link that was sent to you, and also you have them on your computers in front of you. Starting with the rules for adoption, all published in the June 24th, 2022 issue of the Texas Register. The first rule up for adoption is C1.1, which regards Rule 283.4, internship requirements. On line 120 through 121, it removes some language to establish that persons graduating from colleges/schools of pharmacy shall be credited with the number of hours obtained and reported by the college. It simply requires that colleges or schools actually report the numbers. And there were no comments received regarding this rule.
All right, do I have a motion? Rick Tisch has a motion to adopt.
Second.
Lori Henke has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next one, board members, is C 1.2. This is regarding Rule 291.33, amendments concerning operational standards. We have some cleanup language and an in-person counseling requirement are both addressed. On line 220, you'll see some language cleanup by replacing storage and distribution device with the words dispensing and delivery system for a pharmacy that uses an automated system. And it cites to 291.121D regarding remote pharmacy services that use such systems. And it coordinates the language with 291.33 with the definitions in 291.121D. Next, you'll see on line 264, we remove the in-person counseling requirement for prescriptions that require counseling. I will mention that the governor's office has extended the suspension of this rule for another 90 days, and that runs until the end of September. And we did receive several comments. One comment was received from CVS Health supporting the amendments to the in-person counseling requirement. A second comment was received from the National Association of Chain Drugstores supporting the removal of the in-person counseling requirement, and they requested some additional language, which you can see is highlighted in their comment itself. And thirdly, we received a comment from the Texas Pharmacy Association supporting the removal of the in-person counseling requirement. There were no additional comments.
All right. At this time, I believe that there are 3 individuals that have requested the ability to come and speak. Debbie, do you want to go ahead and take lead on that?
Good morning, President Spear and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today and support 291.33 regarding patient counseling. I did provide our written comments, but I wanted to just highlight a few things. We're very fortunate that Governor Abbott recognized the contributions pharmacists make to their communities, and he worked to really remove barriers to allow pharmacists to continue to care for patients during the pandemic. One such barrier was the requirement of in-person counseling, which was waived since March 2020 through now September of 2022. During this time, we've not heard of any increase in patient medication problems with the allowance of counseling through other means than in-person. So TPA does support making the waiving of the in-person counseling requirement permanent. The pandemic has changed the ways that patients act, and pharmacists have been able to provide patients necessary counseling where they want it, when they want it, how they want it, whether that's orally through other means as well as in person. And I do want to point out, of course, this does not in any way waive this. By waiving this requirement does not in any way preclude a pharmacist from still counseling in person. And most definitely they should use their professional judgment and the decision that they do need to make at that time. So we respectfully ask the board to vote yes for the final adoption of the rule and make permanent the waiving of the in-person counseling requirement. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Ms. Garza? Thank you, Julie. Next, I believe Jeff Lush from Texas Federation of Drugstores.
Good morning. Thank you, President Spear and board
You hit
members.
the button there.
Spear and board members. I'd like to express our support and thanks to the board and board staff for its review of 291.33 and for the proposal of removing the requirement for oral patient counseling on a new prescription to be provided in person, and for taking the governor's emergency action of having temporarily suspended this requirement and making it permanent. We all understand that counseling is a critical component of the practice of pharmacy and serves as the final step in ensuring the patient receives proper medication and understands its use. Through the pandemic, we've seen a shift in how patients want to engage with their pharmacy and their pharmacist. As we go into the fall, anticipating additional cases due to the new variants of the COVID virus and even emerging threats such as monkeypox, this enables our pharmacists to ensure they have the flexibility to provide alternate means of meeting the counseling needs of patients. This flexibility also helps reduce unnecessary exposure of other patients and pharmacy staff to patients who are COVID positive. So again, I thank you for your review. I also want to take just a moment to comment on two issues that will appear later on the agenda: non-sterile compounding and the closure over a weekend of a retail community pharmacy in one of our communities.
Okay, so I'm going to invite you to come back for those.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Jeff regarding the counseling component? All right.
Thank you.
Jeff. And I believe we have one other, Nicole Crawl from NACDS.
Thank the board for making this waiver permanent. It's been extremely helpful during the pandemic and staffing shortages, and we appreciate the ability to be flexible with the counseling. And I'm not going to be redundant and say anything else that was already said, but thank y'all very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, board members, thoughts, questions?
I have a question. So I wasn't here last meeting, so I don't know all the conversations that y'all had. But by just striking in person, does that give the opportunity for other than oral, so digitally, virtually, does that all encompass that, or strictly oral?
Megan?
So it still leaves orally in there. So you're thinking about, a telephonic or video or something like that. I don't think you could do it just in writing because it says communicated orally still.
So telephonic or virtually, you could do it?
Virtually, you could have a visit, if you were able to speak to each other.
Okay, but the offer to counsel is not here. So we can't offer, we can't ask the question. That's what it.
Right, that remains the same. So it's still a shall counsel if it's, that new prescription.
Okay.
So companies will have to figure out, if they don't do it in person, what steps they're going to take to make sure that it does still occur. Any other? Yes.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor to approve. We have a second from Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Floor is yours, sir.
All right, we're going to do two of them together now. First one, C 1.3.1, is 291-104. These are amendments concerning centralized prescription dispensing. On line 103, you're going to find that it adds a clarification that a Class E pharmacy that's also engaged in outsourcing of prescription drug order dispensing to a central fill pharmacy shall comply with 291-125. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, regarding centralized prescription dispensing. And this is the same language that you've seen at the prior board meetings. Then C 1.3.2, this is 291-125. I will tell you this came to staff's attention because compliance had issued a warning notice to a pharmacy acting as a central fill pharmacy for a Class C that was outsourcing. The purpose here today is to clarify that Class E's are not prohibited from outsourcing centralized prescription dispensing. So on line 54, it adds Class E pharmacy to the definition of centralized prescription dispensing as a requesting pharmacy. On line 57, it adds Class E to the definition of an outsourcing pharmacy. On line 71, it clarifies that a Class E pharmacy is one that may outsource prescription drug order dispensing to a central fill pharmacy under this rule, if allowed by their state, and if the pharmacies have the same owner or a written contract or agreement and share a common electronic file or have appropriate technology to allow access to dispensing processing information. On line 158, it reads that nothing in this section shall be construed as requiring a non-resident pharmacy that outsources drug order dispensing to a central fill pharmacy to be licensed as a Class E pharmacy in accordance with 291-101 of this title, provided that the non-resident pharmacy does not physically ship, mail, or deliver prescription drugs or devices directly to a patient or patient's agent in this state. And the comments you're going to see are behind tab C 1.3. And we have one comment received from CVS Health regarding both of these rules in support of the clarification the amendments provide for pharmacies operating in a central fill model. We also received a comment from Cardinal Health that was received in support of the proposed amendments. And we received a comment from Fresenius Medical Care that was also received in support of the proposed amendments. There were no additional comments.
All right, I believe at this time, Diana Toe from Fresenius, I'm sure I said that wrong, Medical Care.
That's my key, right?
That's it.
Please
Good
introduce.
morning.
Yeah, please introduce
Thank y'all
yourself.
so much for allowing me the opportunity to be here. My name is Diana Tao, and I'm with Fresenius Medical Care North America. I'm sorry, I get nervous. I'm actually the Senior Manager of Distribution Pharmacists with Fresenius Medical Care, as well as the PIC of the Capel location, which is our Class A pharmacy. I'm actually here to support the proposed amendment for 291.125 concerning centralized prescription dispensing, specifically to allow our Class E pharmacy, which is located in Bluff, Illinois, to be able to outsource to our Class A pharmacy located in Capel. Fresenius Medical Care is a network of 14 mail-order pharmacies. We supply 14 pharmacies throughout the U.S., and we supply home dialysis solutions to our patients. On that, currently our Class A pharmacy is in compliance with the rules, but our ask and our support is that the Class E, which is located out Lake Bluff, would be able to outsource their prescriptions to us at our Class A pharmacy. This would allow us to be able to take care of our home patients in Texas a little bit easier, because our outsourcing pharmacy will be able to send us prescriptions, and then we'd actually be able to deliver them to our patients a little bit more efficiently. Fresenius Medical Care is a huge company, and our dialysis patients receive their products on huge pallets. So they're not something that we can just drop into the mail. So we actually have our own truck fleeting service, and by taking these palletized items and being able to put them onto a truck, we give them personalized delivery to the patients. Allowing us to outsource like that would actually be able to help us to be more fluid in the way that we can get our products to our patients, because we have to coordinate stock as well as trucking movements to get our product there. So bottom line is, we're just wanted to make sure and let you know that we would really appreciate the support in making that rule change so that we would be able to facilitate and help our patients in Texas better. I apologize for being so nervous.
You did great.
Any questions for me?
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right, at this time, I'll entertain any questions, comments. Jenny's got a let's look. Okay.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve from Daniel,
Second.
a second from Donna. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead.
All right, our next one on the agenda is C 1.4, and this regards 291-131 regarding pharmacies compounding non-sterile preparations. And on line 73, you're going to see that it adds the definition of cleaning. On line 99, it adds the definition of sanitizing. On lines 141 through 151, it adds that training shall include hand hygiene, garbing, cleaning and sanitizing, handling and transporting components and compounded non-sterile preparations, measuring and mixing, proper use of equipment and devices, and documentation of the compounding process. Lines 217 through 220, they remove an exception for pharmacies that occasionally compound, instead requiring all pharmacies engaged in compounding to have a designated and adequate area for the safe and orderly compounding of non-sterile preparations. Line 233 requires that cleaning and sanitizing of services shall occur on a regular basis. Line 237, this is regarding equipment and supplies. This is a change from a previous version you saw after some discussion at the May board meeting, and these are those amendments. It requires a pharmacy engaged in non-sterile compounding that requires weighing a component of the preparation to have a Class A prescription balance or analytical balance in weights, which shall be calibrated and have the accuracy of the balance verified by the pharmacy at least every 12 months as specified in the pharmacy's standard operating procedures, or SOPs. The pharmacy must document the calibration and verification. On line 336, regarding the compounding process, personnel engaged in compounding of drug preparations shall perform proper hand hygiene prior as defined in the SOPs. On line 344, any garbing requirements and frequency of changing garb shall be determined by the pharmacy and documented in the SOPs. The garbing requirements in the SOPs must be appropriate for the type of compounding being performed. On line 426, regarding compounding records, on the master worksheet shall now also contain a reference to the location of the criteria used to determine the beyond use date and documentation of the performance of quality control procedures. On line 434, on the preparation worksheet, shall now also document the expiration date of each component. And we did receive one comment from the Texas Pharmacy Association in support of these amendments to this rule. And there were no further comments.
All right. Ms. Garza?
Again, thank you, President Spear, members of the board, Debbie Garza representing the Texas Pharmacy Association. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on and support the final adoption of 291.131 regarding non-sterile compounding. This has been a long process, and appreciate everyone's efforts involved in this process for the many months this has been ongoing. TPA supports the amendments to the rules as published in the June 24th, 2022 issue of the Texas Register. These amendments, we believe, reflect reasonable changes to maintain patient access to much-needed non-sterile compounding preparations, with pharmacists being able to meet those yes for their final adoption. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jim?
Thank you.
Jeff, did you have comments on compounding?
Thank you, President Spear, members of the board. Simply want to thank you all for your efforts. TFDS supports the proposal and believes these are fair and common sense rules on non-sterile compounding that continue to provide access to our patients. We appreciate all the time and effort on the amendments to get to this final rule language, and thank you. Appreciate it.
Any questions for Jeff? All right, thank you. All right, this time I'll open it up to the board. Yes, Jenny?
So I just wanted to maybe have a little discussion on the definition of sanitizing, which starts on line 99. Actually, on line 100, it mentions, all forms of microbial life, including fungi, viruses, and bacteria, using an agent such as isopropyl alcohol. I'm just wondering if it would not be better worded just to say using an appropriate agent and eliminating isopropyl alcohol. Not sure exactly where that verbiage came from. And I bring it up because alcohol does harbor molds sometimes, and they use it to preserve some molds. So that's why I think in our verbiage, if we just said using an appropriate agent, wouldn't be encompass more items that would include killing more fungi and molds.
Megan, could that change be made without having to go back to the registry?
Yes, I think that one it's not large enough that it would need to go back to the register. It's a logical outgrowth. If we did do that, E.1's going to need to update orders and preambles before any vote can be taken on it.
Okay. Other questions?
Go ahead.
I just had a question for Jenny. I don't know which line it was. Class A balances, who do you have to calibrate yours?
I hire a third party company.
Okay, because it doesn't say that anywhere,
Right, and that's what we discussed last
Right,
meeting.
but I want to make it be real clear that you have to have it done, but you just hire a third party to do yours.
I do. I have too many
Right,
for
okay,
for us to do that, so.
okay.
Yeah, I think the language kind of cleared up based
Yeah.
upon our conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I've had lots of questions on that specific topic, so let's make sure that everybody's clear on that. Because there are some balances that all they need to do is hit a button and it calibrates. They're the really expensive balances, and the way it was worded before, they still had to go out and hire a third party. And so now with Board Member Yoakum's comments last time, that has been updated, so whatever your operating procedure says, how it's calibrated, that's what you have to do. Because I've had lots of people have caught me at all the meetings to balances. When they checked, it was like $100 an hour, and they charge them from the time they leave, like Houston, and drive for 4 hours, and they're there for an hour, and then they drive 4 hours back. So you're talking about like $1,000 to have a balance calibrated. But they didn't need that because all they had to do was hit a button. So the way it's worded now, whatever your operating procedure says, is what you have to do.
Okay.
Right? That was your intent?
Right.
Okay.
That clarifies, thank you.
And I'll go ahead and add, one of the questions that I asked was, how did our compliance officers? I wanted to make sure that they were very comfortable, and staff has provided that they've reviewed these and they're good with where we're at. Suzette, did you have something?
No.
All right, so we do have to have Amon change the verbiage, so we will postpone taking a motion on this, or can we go ahead and take our motion?
I think you need a motion to table.
Okay, do we have a
So
motion?
I'll make a motion to table this item till later in the meeting until staff has an opportunity to make adjustments to the language.
All right, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second from Donnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll bring that back then.
That'll be brought back during this meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, our next one on the agenda is C 1.5. That's regarding Rule 305.1. This is regarding the repeal of pharmacy education requirements. You voted at prior board meetings, once for proposing and once for adopting the repeal. This again was at 2 prior meetings under the rule review. And to complete that process, at the last board meeting, you voted proposing the repeal. And that was published in the Texas Register for comment. Now you are voting to adopt the repeal because arguably this rule is duplicative of a registered technician. Finally, the agency does not currently have a registered technician. Finally, the agency does not currently have the resources to perform what is included in this rule. And we did receive one comment from Lisa McCartney opposing the repeal of this rule. Ms. McCartney expressed concern that repealing 305.2 will permit pharmacy technician training programs that do not satisfy ASHP or ACPE standards, and suggested that the board convene a task force to determine current best practices, receive input from the public and stakeholders, and make recommendations to the board. No additional comments were received.
All right. Comments? So I'll make one comment. So I was on this original task force. We've had 2 tech task force. So just to give you a little history. So on the very first task force, we had schools that were out there, they were charging people exorbitant amounts of money, and then they were coming before the board and not able to get their license. So the reality was this was put in place originally to keep that from occurring, but the reality is it never came to fruition. And the problem has really rectified itself with the great schools that we have out there. So I wanted to kind of make sure that you kind of knew where that came from. But the board was never shirking their responsibilities or not doing something. It was just, it was put in place if we needed it. Any other questions, comments? So this will be again a motion to adopt the repeal of this.
I move to adopt the repeal.
We have a motion from Donna and we have a second from Bradley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And with that, we will go to our proposed rules.
All right. Under C.2, point 1, we have 2 rules we're going to talk about together, 291.8 and 291.33, regarding the return of prescription drugs. These amendments to the rules were recommended by the governor's office, and board staff coordinated with the governor's office staff to draft these amendments. These amendments simply reference exceptions contained in the Health and Safety Code for the return of prescription drugs. First one, 291.8, on line 9, it adds a reference to Chapter 431, the Drug Donation Program, and Chapter 442, which it relates to the donation of prescription drugs. And those are both from the Health and Safety Code. Those are exceptions to accepting return drugs and the redistribution of return drugs. And let's talk about the next one here, C 2.1.2, 291.33. On this one, you are going to see some changes that are highlighted in green, and those are the changes you voted earlier this morning to adopt. So that's why they're green. All right, on line 503 of 291.33, you're going to see references to Chapter 431, the Drug Donation Program, and 442, the Donation of Prescription Drugs of the Health and Safety Code. Again, those are exceptions to accepting return drugs and the redistribution of return drugs. Also, there are some grammatical corrections throughout the rule.
questions? Rick?
I have a question. So in other words, if you have a prescription filled, you get it, or else your spouse picks it up for you, and it's incorrect, or it's it's on auto refill, and you bring it back, that means you can get a credit, or am I not understanding this?
So these have to be units of use, and I'll go ahead and take it over to Megan so that she can explain further.
John, do you want to explain these programs?
Sure. So the two chapters at issue, the first one, Chapter 431, is, and these are administered by the Department of State Health Services. Chapter 431 is the Texas Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And Subchapter M of that act covers charitable medical clinics. And these are clinics which provide medical care or drugs without charge or for a substantially reduced charge. And the charitable clinic may accept, dispense, or administer donated prescription drugs subject to some various conditions, including not being controlled substances. Then there's Chapter 442 regarding the donation of prescription drugs. Again, this is run by the Department of State Health Services. And a participating provider in that program can accept donated prescription drugs if it's in its original, unopened, sealed, and tamper-evident unit dose packaging. Single unit doses may be accepted and dispensed if the outside packaging is opened, but the single unit dose packaging is unopened. And under that program, they can't accept controlled substances. They can't accept adulterated or misbranded drugs. They can't accept drugs that are stored, that aren't stored in compliance with the drug's product label. Or United States Food and Drug Administration requires the drug to have a risk evaluation or mitigation strategy. The statute provides the prescription must have been prescribed by a healthcare professional, and that a participating provider can charge a handling fee not to exceed $20 to cover the cost of inspecting, storing, labeling, and dispensing the donated prescription drug. And they can't resell a prescription drug donated under this chapter. And they can't seek reimbursement for donated prescription drugs dispensed under this chapter.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the consumer. This is, got it.
That's correct.
I could have eliminated all that, but I understand.
Further questions?
I'll make a motion.
Yes, Donna?
I just had one question. With regards to safe storage and what, is there any requirement in any of these, in subchapter M or 431 or the chapter 442, that the entity that receives them is required to do testing, or just assumes that by saying that you're accepting them that they were stored properly and all of that?
I believe the drug donation program requires some form of testing, but I can't say that 100% for sure. We'd have to look into that and bring it back to you.
That's my only concern, is that.
I think that's right as well. Everything that, I think all the research that we did and the checking with the programs, there is a step in there that they have to assure that it's been not sitting in a car for 3 weeks or whatever, that it has been kept appropriately.
And these are programs that are in existence, and they've been around for years now. We've just never actually acknowledged them in our rules, and that's what we're doing here, so.
I just had a question. Can these drugs, can they go to a federal health clinic? Like a FQHC health clinic?
We would need to look into that.
Okay.
To see. I
'Cause
know.
that is really a need, and I didn't know that might be a really good thing to look at. I'm involved in one of those federal health clinics, so it might be nice to know that. Thank you.
All right. At this time, we'll take a motion to propose.
I'll make that motion.
Rick has made the motion to propose. Do we have a second? Jenny has made a second. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
All right, our next one is C 2.2. This is regarding Rule 291-73. And this is an issue that was identified by board staff. Simply, Class C personnel and facilities, with 100 beds or less. There's a requirement of being physically present for supervision and a list of functions. And there's an exception for techs to perform approved duties. But we have the wrong citation. So on line 201, it amends the reference to correctly state 562.1011 as opposed to 552.1011 of the Act. So just a citation correction.
I have a motion to propose.
Motion approved.
Brad has made the motion.
Second.
Daniel has second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Our next one is C 2.3. And this issue was identified by board staff to address a requirement of House Bill 2059 from the 86th legislative session. And that was in 2019. Under that, the required healthcare professionals, including pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, to complete a human trafficking prevention course for license renewals. There is a copy of the Texas Occupations Code, Chapter 116, attached behind C 2.3. And this requirement for this course does not have an expiration date. Therefore, on C 2.3.1 regarding 295.8, and this is for pharmacists, line 76 removes the limitation that the requirement for human trafficking prevention course is just for renewals received after August 31st, 2020 and before September 1st, 2022. Because this simply removes the time period because there is not an expiration date. This has to be continually done. And the next one we're going to take up, let's do them at the same time, is C 2.3.2, and that's 297.8 for the technicians. And on line 32, it removes the limitation that the requirement for human trafficking prevention course is just for renewals received after August 31st, 2020 and before September 1st, 2022. And again, it removes the time period because there's not an expiration date on this requirement for this course.
Do we have a motion to propose?
I have a quick
Yes.
question. Where did those dates come from?
So when we were originally adopting all of these, I don't know if you remember, there were quite a few continuing education requirements that rolled out. And we put that time frame in there because all of the others had time frames, and just to make it very clear to people that, you know, starting on this date and for this group of renewals, these are all the ones you're going to need. And we meant to go in and take it out, and then we forgot that we needed to go in and take it out, and that's how we're here now. We're a little late getting on it. We probably should have remembered it a little bit earlier, but there's been a lot of things going on, so we forgot.
Do we have a motion to propose?
Second.
Jenny has made the motion, Donnie has made the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, and our next item is C3, which is the rule review plan for fiscal year 2022 through 2025, and that's behind that tab there. And state law requires that you review the rules we have on a 4-year cycle. State law requires that you review the rules on a 4-year cycle, but what you're looking for here is to see if you still need these rules. It's not about the content of them. So up for adoption today is C 3.1.1, that's Chapter 281, concerning administrative practices and procedures, and C 3.1.2, concerning Chapter 311, concerning the Code of Conduct.
Do we have a motion to retain? We have a motion from Jenny and we have a second from Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. As always, thank you for your thorough work.
All right, thank you, board members.
All right, next on the agenda is the report on compounding, and I will ask Tim to make that report.
The Compounding Advisory Group has not met since our last meeting, and you have taken action today on the compounding issues, but that group has not met.
When was the last meeting?
It was right after I started, so it's been, I want to say August. October, there you go. October 8th. October 8th.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, I'll ask Linda to come forward.
Good morning, board members. So the Prescription Monitoring Program Advisory Committee met on June 29th via Zoom. During that meeting, there was a presentation by Bamboo Health, the vendor for the Texas PMP. Bamboo Health provided some PMP metrics and also a NARCS Care overdose risk score presentation. During the meeting, Dr. Tucker also provided an update regarding PMP funding for integration and NARCS Care. A date has not been set for the next meeting. The Interagency Prescription Monitoring Program Workgroup meeting took place on July 25th, and that was an in-person meeting. During this meeting, Dr. Tucker provided an update regarding continued efforts for funding for integration and NARCS Care, and a date has not yet been set for the next meeting.
Any questions for Linda on these two task force? All right, we'll see you back in a little bit then. With that, we'll go ahead and have Ann come up. And I did want to make a comment. Rick Tisch is going to have to leave the board meeting for an hour for something he could not get out of. We will mark him absent during that time. So just kind of so everybody knows.
Good morning, Madam President, board members. In E.1.1, first slide, you will find a summary data of the finance operations of our agency from September 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2022. We appropriated.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh.
They can't hear you behind you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's on.
You can pull it.
I'm sorry.
You can
Pull closer. Okay, sorry. Let me start again. In E.1.1, first slide, you find a summary data of the finance operations of our agency from September 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2022. We appropriated $10.1 million, and through the end of the third quarter, we spent $6.4 million, which represents 63% of our annual budget. Salaries, wages, and other personnel costs make up approximately 60% of our annual budget. On the second slide, you will see how all the expenses are broken down into the various LBB expense categories. In E.1.2, you will see the travel budget for our board members. We have budgeted $15,000 for travel to Austin for regularly held board meetings, and through the end of third quarter, approximately $5,200 was spent. We also budgeted $1,500 for out-of-state conference meetings, and as of May 31st, $481 was spent. And E.1.3, material changes to the contracts for goods and services. We have no material changes to report to the board. In E.1.4, you will find the proposed budget for AY 2023, which will begin September 1st. We are appropriated $10,135,114 by the state legislature. And the budget is broken down into various expense categories such as salaries and wages, other personnel costs, professional fees and services, fuel, consumables, utilities, travel, rent, and of course, other operating expenses. A detailed description of what our agency expends out of each expense category is provided in the next slide for your information. So next, I would need your approval to approve the 2023 budget.
So we'll need a motion to approve.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Ann,
Yes.
When we move into the new building, what is our expenditure, how will it change when you said rent, or how does that change with the new building versus this building?
Right, we are currently not paying for rent for this hobby building, neither will we be paying for rent.
Okay,
out
but
of
will
it.
any expenses grow because we're there?
We on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Everything gets paid for by TFC.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ann? Can I have a motion to approve the budget?
Second.
We've got Rick Tisch made the motion, Daniel has second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Lastly, want to talk about the 2022 LAR for fiscal year 24 and 25, which was submitted to LBB and all the other oversight agencies last Friday. In the LAR, we asked for a 10% cost of living adjustment for all staff versus the 8% we presented to the board at the May meeting. Okay. We also asked for a 10% equity increase for staff members. Other additional changes were made to lower the cost of the LAR, and our total ask for the biennium is $13.8 million. Okay. This concludes the presentation from finance. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Any questions? Huge thanks. I'm with Rick. Huge thanks on all the work. I know that getting that LAR submitted was a lot of work, and we appreciate everything that you and the staff did to get it in there. So I have 9:55. I know that we've got some people that are scheduled in. It might be a good time to take like a 10-minute break. So if that, we'll go ahead and start back at 10:05. All right, we will call the meeting back to order. We will note, as I had mentioned earlier, that currently we will mark Rick Tisch not present. And with that, I will turn it over to Caroline.
Okay, thank you. We're looking at E.2, and E.2.1 is staff's chart that you're familiar with regarding the number of persons participating in the peer assistance program. The top of the chart is the last 3 fiscal years, and the bottom of the chart behind E.2.1 are the number of individuals participating in the current fiscal year 22. For quarter 3, you're looking at the new participants to the program that have been added between March and May of this fiscal year. And you will note that there has been a correction in the chart to the pharmacist monitored by PRN that has been revised. The issue leading up to this identification will be discussed in your next agenda item and when it was discovered by the internal audit review process. Any questions on the chart?
I think we can proceed then. Raquel, if you want to.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board, and staff. My name is Raquel Leal, and I am the Director for the Professional Recovery Network. I'm here this morning to present to the board PRN's 4th quarter report for the current fiscal year. The Professional Recovery Network continues to receive a steady number of referrals regarding potentially impaired pharmacists and pharmacy students. Compliance by current participants is acceptable, and concerns regarding public safety have been reported to the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. PRN continues to offer an individualized approach to the supports and accommodations offered to our participants throughout the pandemic. This includes continuing to provide participants with the option to complete their evaluations and recovery-related meetings through online platforms if preferred. PRN regional coordinators will continue to provide monthly regional meetings to our participants via online meeting platforms and/or teleconferences to ensure ongoing peer supports are being offered. In April 2022, PRN accepted scholarship applications for pharmacy students to attend the APHA Institute on Substance Use Disorders in Salt Lake City, Utah, which was held on June 1st to June 5th, 2022. PRN provides these scholarships thanks to the generous support of the Texas Pharmacy Foundation. This year, PRN awarded 2 scholarships to pharmacy students that covered the registration fee for the event. On June 16th, 2022, PRN presented to the P2 and P3 students at the University of Texas at El Paso College of Pharmacy during their pharmacy compliance class. PRN discussed the issue of problematic professional substance use and spoke about the PRN program and the services that we provide. The Texas Pharmacy Association Conference took place on July 15th to July 17th, 2022, and was held at Hyatt Regency Austin in downtown Austin, Texas. PRN had a booth in the Expo Hall where PRN staff were able to discuss details of the PRN program with the attendees. PRN continues to explore opportunities to increase program visibility to create awareness of the PRN program, and we will be continuing our outreach efforts to other pharmacy schools in the state of Texas. The legislative budget board numbers for September 1st, 2021 to May 31st, 2022 were submitted to TSBP on June 10th, 2022. And LBB numbers include all licensed pharmacists and pharmacy students enrolled in the PRN program. And this shows as 6 volunteer pharmacy students, 3 board-ordered pharmacy students, 31 volunteer pharmacists, and 42 board-ordered pharmacists. On the last page of the report, please see the attached PRN expenditure report for September 1st, 2021 to May 31st, 2022. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Raquel?
Raquel, I had a question for you. I meant to ask this before. How do we in Texas compare to other states that have their, whatever they call their network? How do are we lower in numbers, or I know it's hard to compare, but how do we compare to other states? Do you check that, or do you
The last I checked was maybe about 2 quarters ago.
Okay.
And it seemed to be comparable as far as pharmacy, profession specific, with board ordered and volunteer pharmacists and pharmacy students. Mhm.
Are there any other questions for Raquel? So I want to say that at TPA, besides working the expo, they worked registration. And it was great to see Will and the entire team there, so I was really, really pleased to see y'all doing that, so.
Thank you. Yes, it was a pleasure to be there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
And with that, we will ask Daniel Graves to come forward.
And Jeff's with him too. He's apparently coming as well.
Oh, I didn't realize both would be here. So Jeff Jones. Welcome, gentlemen. If you'll introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Graves with partner with. There we go. Good morning. I'm Daniel Graves, a partner with Weaver. I'm the internal auditor for the agency. With me, I have Jeff Jones. He's one of our managers who works on the audits that we have for the State Board of Pharmacy. This morning, I come to present to you our status report as of August 1st. This should be our last status report for this year. And in our status report, I will be covering the 2 reports that we've issued for this year, along with our proposed plan for fiscal year 2023, as well as the annual internal audit report draft. So for our first audit, we issued and completed the audit over licensing and licensing renewals. That report, we issued a strong rating. So I know this is one of the first reports you've seen from us. We have a 3-tier rating: strong, satisfactory, and unsatisfactory. So strong is the highest rating that we issue for the report. And the 3 objectives for the report each got a strong rating as well. Overall, there were 3 findings: 1 with a risk rating of moderate and 2 with a low. Those risk ratings, or those findings, the moderate, centered around sending some email notifications to license renewals so that they could be more timely. The 2 low, 1 was over potentially proposing a rule change to allow the board to issue electronic licenses to pharmacies, not pharmacists, because that already occurs, but actual pharmacies, to prevent from having to mail and making the issuance more timely, as well as 1 over user access. But again, those were both low risk rated. So we were really pleased with the audit, how it went, and to be able to issue a strong rating. It was a very good audit for us. The second audit on our plan this year was a follow-up. So our predecessor auditors had a audit that had a finding, and as part of a healthy internal audit function, we follow up on prior findings to make sure that the process owners have gone through remediation efforts. This one centered around corrections in the peer assistance program reporting. This one is left unremediated, but we do feel like we were able to work through the issues to identify, as you previously heard, there were a correction in some of the reports to understand why those are occurring and how to prevent them from happening in the future before those numbers get reported to the LBP. And so we will continue to have that as a follow-up on next year's plan, and do anticipate that it will be remediated based on our interactions and work collaboration with those responsible for reporting those PAP numbers. So any questions on those 2 reports before I move through the rest of the presentation?
Are there any questions?
Tim, I just had a question on that. When they make a report and like this is satisfactory on this one, does that go, do you look at that and then you navigate how to present that or have that remediated, and then when they evaluate next quarter, they look at that again? Or
Absolutely. Thank you.
Is that how that works?
Thank you for the opportunity. I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now. I look at an auditor as an opportunity to be better. And the things that Daniel and Jeff, we particularly work a lot with Jeff, have found are things that are easy to fix. Misty Anderson is the Director of Licensing, and They worked very closely together, and it was a fantastic first audit with us, with Weaver. And we're not going to be perfect. We're going to find things that we can do better, and I think that's what we found in that report. And then he's been working with Caroline, and as soon as they find something, I promise you, Misty and Caroline send me an email or come to my office and say, let's talk about what Jeff just found. But we're gonna correct it. It's very easy to correct. So far, everything that they have brought to our attention, we either already knew or we were in the process of trying to get it fixed. These numbers with PRN, I think we've worked out a solution of how to track that in the future. But they keep me in the loop. They copy me on everything that they send back and forth between Misty and Caroline, and I'm in the middle of all of it, yes.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
And to add to that, we do review all the reports with Tim before we bring them here, so he's got a chance to read and review and contribute as well. If there are no other questions on the reports, I'll move on. So one of the things that is required of the internal audit function by the Texas Internal Audit Act is to have a risk assessment and develop a risk-based audit plan. So we have performed a risk assessment with the agency, and we do update that every year. So we've gone through those procedures to update the risk assessment and develop a plan. So in your packet, you should have our proposed fiscal year 2023 internal audit plan that will cover, the main audit for that year will be over the enforcement function. And we don't have a defined scope for that. We do have some proposed areas that we will consider covering. But in addition to that enforcement audit, we will do follow-ups over the licensing, license renewals, those 3 findings that we just mentioned, as well as the peer assistance program, that 1 open finding. So we'll have 4 open findings to follow up on next year, as well as a brand new audit. And so that is in the packet for your approval. That does have to have approval by the governing body as part of the Texas Internal Audit Act. And in addition to that, separate from your packet, you should have had the draft of the annual internal audit report. So this annual internal audit report is a requirement of the Texas Internal Audit Act. The contents of the report, we don't get to choose what they are. They're prescribed by the state auditor's office. This is in draft for 2 reasons. 1, because it needs your approval, but 2, because the state auditor's office has not yet issued guidance for the fiscal year 2022. So this report was built on using last year's guidance. They usually publish that sometime the first week of August. We developed this in draft, crossing our fingers that guidance would be released and we could review it real quick and see if there were any changes. Unfortunately, the timing didn't work out. So if there are changes based on the new guidance that comes out, we will bring this back to you at the next board meeting for your approval. These are typically, per the guidance, due November 1st. We do have to provide a copy of this to the state auditor's office, to the LBB, and to the governor's office. That's a requirement. If your board meeting falls after that deadline, what we do is we just email the SAO and ask for an extension, and they're usually pretty well granted based on the timing of board meetings. So this is in draft. The contents of it, there's 7 sections. The first section is a explanation of the internal audit and the agency's compliance with the Texas Internal Audit Act. The second section is a disclosure of the 2022 internal audit plan and its results. Section 3 is a disclosure on whether or not the internal audit function has performed any consulting. We have not this year. We are allowed to perform consulting services under our standards, but we have not this year, so we've disclosed that we didn't do anything. Section 4 is the quality report on the internal audit function, and so you'll see a copy of our firm's peer review as part of the Texas CPA Act. We participate in a peer review every 3 years. This is the most recent copy. We're due for one that we'll be going through this year, and so next year's report will have a new letter. Section 5 is a disclosure of the 2023 internal audit plan. So assuming that you approve what we just presented you, this will hold true. We have to disclose the plan and the number of hours, as well as any areas from our risk assessment that were high risk that are not included in the plan. Section 6 is any external audit services procured by the agency. There were none. And then Section 7 is a compliance statement on how the agency complies with fraud, waste, and abuse reporting. So again, those are prescribed based on and completed based on last year's guidance, and if there are any changes, we'll bring those back to you, but we're presenting it today for provisional approval. If there are no changes, this would be what we file.
Are there any further questions? Mr. Graves? All right, as he has stated, based upon the act, we will need a provisional motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Donnie. Do we have a second? We have a second from Donna. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, gentlemen, thank you for all your hard work and for, as Tim said, giving us the opportunity to be better every day in what we do.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will go to E.4, which is going to be covered by Tim.
You have our FY 2023 goals and objectives in your packet. This is a living document, and there's a whole lot in here. If you have any questions, me or part of the team that's here can help answer those questions. If there's things that you don't see on here that you think needs to be part of this in the future, if you will share that with us, we will add it next time. Every day is a new and exciting and interesting day at TSBP, and we have lots going on, and we're all working together to get the job done.
Do we have any questions or comments after your pre-review of it? I thought it was very thorough. Go ahead.
I will say, I was asked Tim. Tim, you've been here a year. How have you enjoyed being in Austin and being your head of the TSBP? You had a year of work.
I love being here. I have the best team in the world. Without the team that we have, we couldn't get the job done. You see part of the team here, but there's a whole lot of people on the 5th floor and across the state of Texas that are making a difference. We have lots of opportunities in the future. We've had quite a bit of turnover this year because of salaries and other things, and so we have lots of new people with us at the agency, but it's been a fantastic year. I've loved getting to know Texas individuals. I'm still learning the Texas legislative process, and I'm getting to be immersed by fire very soon with the new legislative session. For those of you that didn't know, I got to testify before the Senate Health Committee, and we'll talk about that a little later on the agenda, but it was interesting. I thought I did a fantastic job, and then they asked me no questions that had to do with anything that I had presented. Megan and Misty and I went at 11 o'clock when they told us to be there, and at 6 p.m. they called me before the group to give my 3-minute presentation. So it was an interesting day, but you know, I'm a people person, I'm a relation person. I love to meet people, I love to build those relationships, so it's been a great year, and I appreciate y'all giving me that opportunity.
All right, so we do need to approve the goals and objectives.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Daniel to approve. Do we have a second? Second from Ian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. That does carry then. All right, so under E.5, one of the things that as a board we must do is to review and approve the Accreditation Council for Pharmacy Education and the accredited programs of colleges and schools of pharmacy. You will find that there is a list there, and we do need to approve that we recognize these individuals or these entities.
We're just approving that they exist or that they're accredited?
Yeah, no, we recognize them.
So Julie, the information under view, if you were to be able to click on it, is not pertinent. Is that correct? For
No.
the business today?
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct.
I'll move approval.
We have an approval from Daniel. Second from Bradley. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And then I believe Megan is going to take us through the approval of pharmacy technician testing. Is that correct?
Tim, did you want to lead in on this one, or do you want me to?
I'll start. I think the three of us are going to do this together. In the past, we've done contracting for pharmacy technician services. We've done hiring psychometricians. We've done all kinds of things that were necessary in the past. There are two groups nationally that do testing, and that's NHA and PTCB. So this year, after much discussion and evaluation, we determined not to do the contracting. We were the only state in the United States that did the contracting with one of those organizations, and it was several days and several dollars on both sides to make that happen. They already hire psychometricians to evaluate their tests. Both of the agencies do. So I'm not sure, my opinion was, I'm not sure why we needed to hire another set of psychometricians and spend several $1,000s of our money to revalidate what they've already validated. So we did not go that route this year, and Julie and I discussed it, and we approved going this process, but our purchaser wants all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed, as I do as well. And so he wants you as a board to approve that we are going to use those two agencies for our technician testing. And then it would be your prerogative as we go in the future to give staff the authority to do this in the future. It would not have to be on the agenda, but this time Dave Hardy wanted the board to sign off on it and to approve what we have done at this point. So that's where we are. Megan may want to add something else to that.
No, I think you've covered it all. So what's before you now is the staff recommendation to approve PTCB and the NHA accept exams. And so that's, we need a vote on that approval. And then as Tim said, you have the ability to delegate to staff to continue approving as long as these are the two exams. And then if you wanted to, you could, tell us to bring it back to you if there is a new player who comes around, with a new exam, or if you ever decide that you just want to hear it again. You also can choose not to do that, and we can do this every year and talk to you about it every year.
It was very duplicative in what we were doing, and it was costing us, and it was very not necessary. Questions, comments? A motion to accept?
I'll move.
Second.
We have a motion to accept from Lori with a second from Donnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
President Spear,
Yes.
so that was a motion for approval. Did the board have any opinion on whether or not they wanted to delegate to staff?
Do we have to motion for that?
I
Do a
think
separate
you don't
motion?
have to motion, but you have to tell
Go
us.
direct us, that would.
I would say that we direct the staff to do it unless there's some kind of material change
Yeah.
to either of those companies or another one comes into play.
I agree.
We would definitely bring it back to you if there was any change in either of those, and if there was a third one come about, we wouldn't just accept, we would bring it back for your discussion. If
Would
that's
you-
okay with all of you.
Would you prefer that that be done through motion, or is just the direction satisfactory for what you're needing?
I think a direction in the minutes is fine. I don't think a motion is necessary, but if you feel better with a motion, Mr. Parliamentarian, you make a motion and we'll vote on it.
I love motion.
You just
Actually,
like the Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, I was also going to say now, I'll refrain on that one because I want to bring back the other item that we tabled earlier.
Okay. I don't believe it has been loaded yet.
It has, it's ready for you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go to that. So, next on your count, or on the agenda is E.7, which is a calendar of events. This lists the state holidays. It also lists our board meetings, so I encourage everybody to put them on their calendars now. I also encourage you to let your employers know that those are our board meetings, so that they can be cleared way in advance. And you can look through to see where we will have skeleton holidays, and where there are optional holidays for the staff. All right, so with that, I guess we'll invite John. Do you need to come back for this then, or Megan?
I can go through it.
All
unless
right.
John just has a burning desire.
Is that the C.1.4?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for us to remove item C.1.4 from the table for consideration.
Any opposed? There we go.
Okay, so board members, during the break, Amy loaded the revised language and the revised order and preamble for you for 29131. So it will reflect the change that was requested earlier to replace agents such as, and then listing examples with appropriate agent. And then the order and preamble will reflect that revision and any comments received. And so we would just need a vote for adoption of the revised version that's currently on your laptops.
So with the revised version, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the revised version.
I'll second that.
Jenny has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion does pass. All right, and with that, we will ask Ms. Ann Driscoll to come forward for E.8. You know, you're always the one we really want to hear from the most, right?
I love that. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
One thing that I wanted to state is that we provided you some information before the board meeting for you to look at regarding the move. That would have been in the folder that Lily sent you. We have tentatively scheduled an IT move to occur on the 9th to allow our IT staff to set up our servers. And I say tentatively all throughout this, and that's the common theme, so just bear with me, it's going to be a common word. Until that is confirmed in September, that's just kind of how we're having to operate. The move date at this moment is still set for September 13th and 14th. I did confirm that with the movers. TFC has not notified me that there's any changes in that, so that's what we're going forward with. So on the 13th and the 14th, that will be when the movers will be here to move agency items. The movers have requested that no more than 2 staff members be present on those dates, as the movers are actively engaged in the move. And so that will be me and David Hardy, who is our purchaser. Especially with contracting stuff and stuff coming in, he's a really vital person to have there. So what we have determined is that staff and board members, if you were planning to come, will be encouraged to be in the new office space on Thursday, September 15th to unpack, so as we can be operational on Friday the 16th. That is not to indicate that we will not be operational the rest of the week. Our intention is, by moving the servers early, to allow as many staff as possible to work remotely. So operational just means within the new space. Parking will not be available under the Bush Building or under the mall at the time that the agency will move. There is not a guesstimate for a timeline on that. The reason for this is that there are roads that need to be built and paved, and the exit from the building parking garage has to be finished. This is all subject to permits and okay from the city of Austin. So there's not an estimated time frame on this. I've heard don't plan on it for a year. I've heard it could be 3 months. So we'll just play it as it goes. When it comes time for the I'll get to that in a second.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, who's responsible for those particular roadways? Are those state roadways or
They're city.
That's what I
Which is
thought.
why we're dependent on the city of Austin. Once we are able to park under the building, there is enough parking under the Bush building for all state employees within the building. So the mall parking is really extra for us. It allows staff to have a lot more options and where to park. At some point in time, Garage R will become more of a visitor garage than a state employee parking garage, and that's where they mentioned that they will be directing visitors more. I don't anticipate that being anytime soon because right now they need it for all of the state employees. The one other thing that they did tell me is that the Bush Building parking garage will not be eligible for UT parking. So if we had staff or functions that happened on a weekend, staff needed to work, they would have access to the building and parking without having to worry about reserved parking. They are verifying badging. So I'm gonna check in with y'all to see what kind of badge you have. If you have the badge that looks like this, you're good to go. If you don't have a badge that looks like this, I will have to get with you to coordinate getting you an updated badge, which could involve a picture. It is not vital for you to have this to attend the board meeting because the board meeting is not happening in the Bush Building. On the day that we move, we'll just get you a visitor pass. So, and part of the reason that I'm not in a huge rush to do this is because you don't need daily access, and hopefully by the time the next board meeting happens, the location for this will actually be in the Bush Building, which will make it a lot easier for the whole process to happen. So just kind of be on the lookout for me to check in with you about what does your badge look like, and then set some tentative plans with you to get an updated one. They do have badging at the entrance. It's kind of like a subway turnstile. You badge it, it opens. We did get to go see that last week. It does in fact immediately close behind you, and even if someone was riding your coattails to get in, it will be uncomfortable. So just the security for the entrance to the building is pretty exciting for staff. The other thing is the access to the elevators is also run by badging. If you're a visitor, you go to the visitor's desk, they will give you a temporary access badge, which would allow you to call an elevator. The elevators are floor specific, so you have to badge, you have to choose the floor that you're going to. Supposedly the only floors that are available are the ones that have public meeting rooms or public access. So you will see gaps. It's not, the floor exists, you just can't access it. You badge, you pick the floor that you go on, and it will direct you to one of 8 elevators. The advantage is that you don't have to stop on every floor up to the 13th floor. It will take you directly to the 13th floor. It's the same thing coming back down. There are no call buttons in the elevator. You have to call it on the outside by utilizing the badge. The advantage for us is that we do have a log of who's been on the floor, who's leaving the floor, who's accessing the building. So those security features are really nice. The last thing that I wanted to cover with y'all is that board meetings will continue to be assigned to the TDLR conference room for November and February. And we will give you all kinds of information closer to that on where that is, how to get there, what room number it is. But we have decided that we're not going to change that at this time. It's a known, we have it, there's no question about us having board meetings there. What we haven't done is set board meeting space for May and August. There's a possibility that there will be a conference room in the Bush Building that we can have our board meetings in. If it does, we would really like to have that because we have to drag all of this wherever we go. So we would like to help Shada maintain her sanity and not dragging this far if possible. So we will get you more information on that. If it is not available, we also have space at TDLR potentially for those other board meetings. So just know the first 2 we're just gonna leave it as it is because we know everything is good. But for May and August, we will get with you as soon as possible about where those locations are gonna be, but hopefully it'll be in the Bush Building. Did y'all have any questions?
Questions for Ann?
Thank you, Ann.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
huge
For
work.
everything. One question is, maybe on that November meeting, would there be a way we could, as maybe a group, could tour the building, since we won't be using it, and we'll be at the other, for our, is there any way to schedule a walkthrough in mass, or is Megan will let us and all go, if that would be possible?
We'll
maybe.
definitely look at it.
If that would be something you could do. Thank you.
Not a problem. And if you have specifics you'd like to look at, let me know.
Okay, so I will go back to September 15th. So September 15th, I would still ask board members that are eligible or that can to put that on their calendar. We will be there to serve the staff, so via Ann, we will be assigned tasks. It may be unloading and supplies or setting up files or just moving boxes. But if you can, look at your calendar. If you can be there, send me an email and we will create a roster so that she can get our temporary badges set up.
Is there a tentative timeframe for the 15th?
That's good.
We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, it's at y'all's, definitely
Plan
at y'all's
on-
pleasure.
Plan on the whole day, but if you can only do half a day, then you can do half a day, but let me know what you can and cannot do.
The other thing that I was gonna say is the reason that we're doing it this way too is we have a lot of really quiet staff members who are they're very quiet, and it would be hard for them to ask for some assistance. So that's why we're doing a task list, is I can go to people and ask, what do you need, get a list, and then just have it available to go over with you, and you can pick a task off of there that you wanna do.
Yes, ma'am.
Ann, or maybe Tim, is there any concern about disruption in like the timeliness of license renewals and that kind of thing during September? Is there anything that we as license holders should do to anticipate?
Not that we hope.
We are not expecting anything. We're hoping maybe to close down a half a day on Friday once they unplug our computers. And IT's plan is to be back live on Monday, if everything works right, and then we'll be working from home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday may be a day that essential people work and everybody else is in the office setting up, and then we're hoping for Friday to be live. So there's some other agencies that are just closing. This agency is not closing. This agency is planning to continue to work. So we do not expect anything, maybe a day or two, but we're not expecting any kind of major delay.
And as far as mail forwarding for those thousands of people who are accustomed to mailing everything to 333 Guadalupe Street, forwarding mail is occurring well with other agencies that have already moved? Or
That's
do
a
we
really
have any
good.
concerns
That's a
about
really
that?
good question, Vice President Hinkie. Mail at our new building is an interesting concept.
Okay.
They built a mail room in our building on the 6th floor, but the United States Postal Service does not recognize mail rooms except on the 1st floor. So therefore, we do not have a mail room in our new building, and they're having to drive south to the post office to pick up our mail, and we will get it delivered once a day, sometime between 12 and 2, which for us is a huge hurrah, because right now our mail comes between 9 and 5 or 10 and 5 or whatever, and we never know when it's going to walk in, and the receptionist and Ann and Misty and Krista and whoever has to stop right then and do the mail and scan it. We are doing our due diligence to do forwarding, to do change of address, to do all that kind of stuff. But it will interest you also as a board that we were given the wrong address in February to forward things to. And so we've had to change that and drop the N off of North and just do 1801 Congress Suite 13.100. But mail has been interesting. So stay tuned. We are learning about mail each and every day. And all of you thanked Ann, and Ann has done an unbelievable job with this move, but she has a move committee that she also is depending a lot on, which is a member or 2 members from each team at the agency. And she would also tell you that that committee has done a fantastic job and continues to work really hard to get us ready for this move. So I appreciate Ann and her move committee for doing lots of behind the scene things, and it's been an interesting process to be involved in. And
I was
we
gonna
are
say a yeoman's task.
Yeoman's task, and we are ready to get moved, but I will be glad when September the 15th gets here.
And one thing that we plan is that I don't plan to forward on the day we move. I plan to forward 2 weeks before the move so that we're not figuring that out during the move.
Right.
Just based off of things that I have heard from other agencies. So our plan is to start forwarding the 1st of September. Me, the receptionist, someone will drive wherever we need to get the mail if they're not going to deliver it here. And we're talking to the postman, you know, we're still here, you're going to deliver it here. If not, they're going to forward it. And then I have conversations with the capital mail people going on to try and figure out what that looks like, because we definitely have a lot of people who are still doing paper processes, and we want to not interrupt that. The biggest advantage is we're moving in the middle of the month. I would be more stressed about it if we were moving the first or the last part of the month, but having it be the 15th gives us a little bit of grace, fortunately, that some other agencies have not had.
Well, and the good thing too was as dates moved, we got further away from May graduations. And so a lot of our grad interns will already have their licenses.
And that was somewhat intentional in our
Yes.
request for September.
And what is the, we're the last agency to move, is that right?
That is my understanding.
So there will, in the move on the 15th, there won't be other people trying to involve the move. If you're down below sending things up elevators, that they won't be doing that but us.
There's one agency that is moving the end of August that was kind of temporarily moved to the same time frame we were, maybe a week later. If they move ahead of us, it definitely helps us. So at this moment in time, we are the only agency moving during that time.
I talked to their executive director this morning, and they are moving the last weekend in August.
They did confirm.
Yes.
So yeah, we should be the only people moving at that time, which is great, because then, like you said, we have 3 elevators, and only one of those goes down to the loading dock, so.
Okay, that's good, good planning, thank you.
Any other questions for Ann? Again, Ann,
Thank you.
thank you for all you've done and for
You're
the
welcome.
committee. I mean, it has been a huge task, and we know that there's still, a month and a half's worth of
There's
work to
fun.
do,
We
but
still have fun.
it's gonna be good.
And just kind of FYI, if you do come, we kind of have a tentative pizza party, lunch offering planned for whenever you have a moment, so.
Wear your tennis shoes, wear working clothes.
Wear your tennis shoes.
We
It'll be
will
during
be-
our lunch break, so it's during a lunch break, but
We will be serving the
there will be
staff.
pizza available there.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, and with that, we'll go to E.9 and we'll call Miss Linda Ford again.
Good morning again. So in your packet, you have the last quarter the stat sheet for the Texas Prescription Monitoring Program. And I am currently working on getting some additional information added, including adding some trend lines and a few more PMP statistics. As of the end of the last quarter, we had a total registered users of 174,551. There were 50.78 million searches through integration. 8.92 million controlled substances were reported to the Texas PMP. Currently, we continue to have 36 states that we share data with through Interconnect. Also, this quarter, PMP has begun conducting audits for the pharmacist lookup mandate. During this process, if needed, staff reaches out to the pharmacy for prescription records to verify that a lookup was required, And if so, that the mandated lookup was conducted. And that's one of the new initiatives that we started as a result of the audit. And that's the information I have to share.
All right. Any questions? Rick?
Just a quick clarification, maybe you just want to make sure, the mandated lookup means that if the pharmacist has to hit the view report, regardless
That's
of the
correct.
score or what have you, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, so in an integrated system, what happens is when the patient's chart is pulled in, it's pre-populated with a score that they can view. But in order to actually view the P&P report, there's a button, View Report, that they would have to click on in order for it to be counted and as fulfilling the requirement for the mandate. And right now we are working on educating pharmacies that we're finding maybe are not clear about that issue. And, you know, when we identify, you know, that lookup was not performed when it should have, we do reach out to the PIC and the responsible pharmacist and make sure that they're educated for the future.
Yes, Tim?
There will be something on our website when Shada and I can get together and get it on there, hopefully within the next couple of days. But this is something new that we have just discovered. I think in the past, we thought that if they looked at the scores, that was a lookup, but that doesn't hit as a lookup in Bamboo system. So they've got to hit View Report. And if they don't hit View Report, we can go in and look at each person's record to see whether they've looked it up or not. And as Linda said, our number one goal is education, and that's where we're starting, is education. But a lot of these pharmacists are going to be getting these letters, and they're going to say, I looked it up, I looked it up. And they did look at the first screen that shows those scores, but they didn't hit View Report. And until they hit View Report, it does not register as a lookup. So just make sure if you're sitting in a position that you can help your pharmacist understand, they've got to hit that View Report. But we will have something on the website if you want to turn their attention to that. Hopefully, as soon as Shada and I can get together and decide how to word that and put it understandably on the website.
Yeah, one of the things that we learned the last several years with opioids and whatnot, documentation is extremely critical, that someone could look years down the line to see what the pharmacist decided to do. And clicking the View Report is one way of acknowledging that they did their part versus having to assume, which I think we were all doing. So it's probably something we just have to build into the process for people.
Linda, will you be presenting the results of your audits at upcoming board meetings?
I can definitely share that information, yes.
I would be curious,
Okay.
but I'll leave that up to the discretion of
I can do that.
Tim and T.
We definitely can do that. Give us a few months of data and let us look at what it's going to be. A lot of this is new stuff that we found during our audit last year that we needed to do. Linda started several things since she took over as manager of the program. So give us a few months to get data, and then we'll be happy to share it with you.
I think it'll be cleaner then. I think that sounds great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hey, Tim, I've been asked questions from cancer centers because their patients are on these very medications, but they're all terminal patients. How does that, what is our procedure for them? Is that changed, or is that on clinics that have a pharmacy?
It has not changed. They are not required to do the lookup, and as Linda said, if they appear on a report, our staff in her department, her team will call and say, what was the diagnosis here, or why did you not look it up? And as long as they follow one of those categories that you don't have to look up, they're in good shape.
Okay.
That hasn't changed at all.
Okay.
So even if a patient has 0 score,
That's
we will
correct.
stop and go look at it.
That's correct, because all you're seeing is a score. You're not truly viewing the report to see what's in it, if there are any prescriptions at all. I'm not sure if a 0 means that there's no prescriptions all the time, and it may not be the case, so they really need,
As far as I know, 0 means there's no prescriptions. So, we're gonna add time to every prescription.
I think the important part, is the recording that the process was done. Because I think you're right, a 0 probably means there's nothing there, right? I think that's what the assumption is everybody's making. But it's the process to where you can record that a view was done somewhere down the line if someone wants to ask about it.
It's also part of the statutory requirement. So like Linda was saying, when you look at that score, you're just looking at a summary. But the statutory requirement is to look at the controlled substance history. And until you hit view report, you're not seeing the full history in front of you. And I think that's why the Bamboo system is set up the way that it is. Also, you know, for the recording and everything else. But it's so that, you know, you're acknowledging that you're seeing the actual history. And I think that's why just looking at the summary doesn't meet the legislature's requirement that they put in statute for the mandatory lookup.
Yeah, I get that for if you have a score, but if you don't have a score, to make somebody have to do an extra step to go pull up the report, look at it, I mean, it's gonna add to, you know, stores doing 5,000-6,000 prescriptions a week.
Linda, can we verify with Bamboo, does 0 mean that there's nothing in that record? And then Megan also can look and see, and I agree with what you said, I'm not disagreeing at all. But if it is a 0, does that tell us that there's no controlled substances in that report? And we may still have to hit the view report. But let us look at it and make sure.
I want to know if it's a view report, why the system can't just make everyone look at the report. I mean, you've got the number, that's fine, but then that would avoid anything. If there was a way to ask, if it would just print it would just let you see the report when you log into that patient.
Yeah, I'm not sure how, I know that the way it's set up through Gateway is that that's a manual call that's made. So in order for that report request to be sent to Gateway, the button has to be pushed.
Okay. Well, I just thought it'd be simpler if it would just show me everything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm taking the time, it wouldn't, I mean, just a thought.
All right, any other questions for Linda? Well, Ms. Linda, we really appreciate all that you're doing and all the work that you've put into it.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will go to E10, which Megan has for us.
Okay, this is your report on appeals from the State Office of Administrative Hearings and other court actions. First, we have the Garrett appeal, and you've been hearing about this one for the past couple of years. This is the case where 2 physicians sued TSBP and TMB regarding the prohibition from physicians dispensing from office practices. There was a favorable ruling from a district court that dismissed the case, but the plaintiffs appealed to the 3rd Court of Appeals in Austin. An attorney from the Office of the Attorney General, Solicitor General's office has been appointed to handle the case for the board. The briefs were filed last July and August, and the court decided not to conduct oral arguments, which means the appeal will be decided on the briefs, and there have been no updates since the last board meeting. Next, we have Whole Women's Health SB 8, and you've heard about this one for a while now. It regarded Senate Bill 8, which you may have heard referred to in the news as the fetal heartbeat bill. The plaintiffs were Texas abortion providers and individuals and organizations who help patients obtain abortions, and we're suing the executive directors of TMB, the Texas Board of Nursing, TSBP, along with the executive commissioner of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Attorneys from the Attorney General's office and the Solicitor General's office were appointed to handle this case, and on June 24th, the district court issued an order dismissing the claims. Next, we have Whole Women's Health pre-row ban, and this one is in regards to what we commonly refer to in the news and in other areas as the pre-row ban on abortion. Attorneys from the Office of the Attorney General and Office of the Solicitor General have been appointed to handle this case. In June, plaintiffs filed a petition in district court for declaratory judgment and an application for temporary restraining order and temporary injunction against the Attorney General, the executive directors of TMB, Texas Board of Nursing, TSBP, and the executive commissioner of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, and several district attorneys. The district court issued a temporary restraining order lasting until July 12th. The Office of the Solicitor General filed a mandamus petition asking to vacate the temporary restraining order and a motion to stay with the 1st Court of Appeals. The Office of the Solicitor General then filed a mandamus petition and emergency motion for temporary relief in the Texas Supreme Court. In July, the Texas Supreme Court granted a stay of the temporary restraining order as to the state defendants, and the parties submitted briefs to the Texas Supreme Court regarding whether the district court has jurisdiction to enjoin enforcement of a criminal statute. The plaintiffs filed a motion with the district court to extend the temporary restraining order, and the district court extended the temporary restraining order. And then plaintiffs filed an amended petition with the district court, and the Office of the Solicitor General has filed an amended answer. Then we have CVS 8336. They appealed the board order that was entered as a result of a hearing that was held at the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and then your adoption of a proposed order at the May board meeting. This case is in the 455th District Court in Travis County. An attorney from the Attorney General's office has been appointed to handle this case, and the plaintiffs filed their brief on June 30th, and the case has been set for hearing on September 12th. Then we have Blue Mint Farm Co. and Jonah Russian. This case is in federal district court. The pharmacy, Blue Mint Farm Co. and Jonah Russian, the PIC, had an IC in March of 2021 regarding alleged non-therapeutic dispensing, and they chose not to enter into the proposed agreed board order from the IC, and board staff filed and served notice of hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearings. The lawsuit alleges that the red flag factors rule is discriminatory and the unlawful administration of disciplinary proceedings. An attorney from the Attorney General's office has been appointed to handle this case. And on June 16th, the Office of the Attorney General filed a motion to dismiss. In July, plaintiffs filed a response brief, and the OAG has filed a reply brief. Then we have Light Care RX LLC, the federal case. And you've also heard about this one before. As I stated, this case is in federal court. This pharmacy had an IC in March of 2021 regarding an alleged failure to operate. They chose not to enter into the proposed agreed order from the IC, and board staff filed and served notice of hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearings. The lawsuit alleged that the failure to operate rule is unconstitutional and discriminated against those in heat zone areas. An attorney from the Attorney General's office was appointed to handle this case. In November, they stayed the case pending the administrative law judge's decision in the State Office Administrative Hearings case. And per the court's order, the parties had 1 month after the ALJ reached a decision to move to reopen the case. The ALJ proposed a decision in January, and the board entered orders against the pharmacy and the pharmacist at the May board meeting, and neither party moved to reopen the case, so it is closed. And then we have Light Care RX LLC, the appeal. And so this same pharmacy and PEIC filed a petition to appeal the board orders that were entered in May in the Travis County District Court. And an attorney from the Office of Attorney General's office has been appointed to handle this case, and we are preparing the administrative record for the Attorney General's office now. And that is all of the cases.
Any questions for Megan?
So any concerns with any of those pending things, items?
Nope, we are on top of them all.
Perfect.
All right, well, Miss Megan, you have our next item on our agenda as well.
I do. So behind E.11, there is a handout showing possible statutory changes for the 88th session that staff has put together for you. And the first one you've seen before, but we'll go through it again, is section 565.003. And during the 2019 legislative session, the legislature passed House Bill 2174 and House Bill 3284, both of which amended section 565.0031 of the Pharmacy Act regarding disciplinary grounds for non-resident pharmacies. Currently, both versions are in effect and are slightly in conflict, and these need to be reconciled. House Bill 2174 listed specific sections of the Texas Controlled Substances Act as disciplinary grounds, and House Bill 3284 listed all of Subchapter C of the Texas Controlled Substances Act. Subchapter C includes more sections than listed in House Bill 2174 version. Section 41.003 of the Texas Controlled Substances Act specifies which sections of Chapter 41 are to be administered by the board and which sections are to be administered by the Director of the Department of Public Safety. The sections listed in the House Bill 2174 version are consistent with the scope of the board's authority in Section 41.003. So staff believes House Bill 2174, that version reflects the legislature's intent. And then next we have Section 568.003, and this is regarding fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. So in Section 563.003A3 of the Texas Pharmacy Act, for pharmacy technicians, the language differs from the language in Section 565.001A5 for pharmacists. Because for techs, the fraud is limited to seeking a registration. And it seems like this language difference may have been an oversight. It seems that section 568.003A3 could be reworded to mirror 565.001A5 and say, in acting as a pharmacy technician or pharmacy technician trainee, or in seeking a registration to act as a pharmacy technician or pharmacy technician trainee. And so that would bring it in line with what's currently in place for pharmacists. And then lastly is section 562.0541. And during the 2021 legislative session, the legislature passed House Bill 1935, which added section 562.0541D of the Pharmacy Act. And this limits the quantity of an emergency refill of insulin-related equipment or supplies to the lesser of a 30-day supply or the smallest available package. Concerns were expressed that the smallest available package might be more than a 30-day supply, and the pharmacist would have to break that package apart. The words "the lesser of" could be removed from section 562.0541D to address this concern.
Any questions for Megan? These are informational only for right now. All right. We'll invite Ms. Caroline back.
Okay, well, at your last board meeting, you asked staff to provide some information regarding a discussion on Salary Schedule C. And so this is E.12 on your agenda. We prepared some material behind E.12, but if you'll allow me to introduce a little bit of information, I'm by no means an expert on this. I knew a little bit going into it, just by way of working at the state board and having employees, and got an opportunity to ask some questions of other people who knew a little bit more than me, and also did a little research, so it was kind of fun. But I'm happy to share that information with you, and then we can look at the slides, so you'll have hopefully a broad framework to look at for your discussion. So the Texas Position Classification Act, which is currently codified in the Texas Government Code, was established under the Position Classification Act dating back to 1961. And it provides just general job descriptions and a salary structure for all state employments. And the Salary Position Classification Act then organizes those state job titles into specific classifications. And these are assigned to one of three salary classifications. And these are known as Salary Schedule A, Salary Schedule B, and your Salary Schedule C. And because paying state employments is part of the state's budget, the salary schedules are established by the legislature during the state's budget process each biennium. So this is under Article 9 of the General Appropriations Act, and this regulates exactly how state employments are going to be paid each biennium. The General Appropriations Act also provides information on the position classification plan, including the salary schedule. So that's going to be your minimum and your maximum for each one of those schedules and each job classification. So for reference, your Schedule A is going to be your support personnel and your maintenance kind of technical positions that the state employs. Schedule B is the majority of positions that are professional and managerial. And then Section C is used specifically for law enforcement jobs. And under the Position Classification Act, that's specified as 4 agencies. It's the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, and the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. The main thing about Schedule C is that it does differ from Schedules A and B in that it requires automatic increases based on your length of service. So for all other state employments, there's it's job performance, kind of skills based. equity increases that require your salary to go up. This is specifically based on years of service, and you graduate into that next salary structure. So in addition to the government code provisions and the General Appropriations Act, the state auditor's office oversees how this is set out, and they take everything in the General Appropriations Act and put it into nice charts that you can actually read rather than having to go read the bill to get that information out of. And all states were required to work with the Texas Comptroller's Office to set up our payments, and specifically in each one of these salary structures. A and B is the same, but C is a little different. You work with the Comptroller's Office to pay your personnel. And then, of course, the employee retirement system also has a function because the pension program runs through them. So, and then each enabling statute kind of, especially for the 4 that are delineated into the state law, they do, set out that you can employ Schedule C, and kind of makes it clear there that you have Schedule C employees. So that is what sets up for you what's behind E.12. So this is from the state auditor's office. This is for this biennium. You can see which employments are listed there in Schedule C. And then if you scroll down a little bit, those are all the different job qualifications that are currently in Schedule C. You'll see the top of page 3. That's going to be the salary schedule. So that's how the minimum and maximum is paid within that salary schedule. And then the rest are excerpts from the laws that we just talked about. So if you're interested to go look at the General Appropriations Act, the Legislative Budget Board publishes that each biennium, so you can go to their website and pull that up. And some of the sections from the government code we discussed are also included for you.
All right. Daniel, I believe this was your request, so.
Yeah, I had spoken with a couple of the, thank you. I had spoken with a couple of our folks within the Board of Pharmacies that oversee, I guess, investigations and it's kind of the enforcement aspect of our department, and they had just expressed an interest in kind of figuring out, well, what do we need to do, or what would the process be to either be incorporated within that Schedule C, or more or less trying to figure out what are ways to improve overall salary structures for our enforcement arm of the Board of Pharmacy. And so wanted to bring that to the board. I'd spoken with Tim about it briefly as well. He was already familiar with those conversations because I believe those same folks had spoken with him as well, and just wanted to see if we could have a discussion about what those requests are and if there is any room for adjustments, or if that is specifically.
The group of investigators that you are referring are in that group. We just paid for a salary survey by an outside agency, and we know where the gaps are. It's everybody. We've tried to be creative with a few positions. We had a little extra money, and we've tried to bump a few of our people. It's amazing to me that I don't know how our lowest paid people at our agency can live in Austin. I do not know how they pay their bills and live in Austin. So we've got needs from the bottom up. We do have plans, and the LAR that you have approved that we submitted on Friday has requests to bump all of those people up. If that group gets the suggested increases that we have requested in the LAR, they will be not far from the salary that those are criminal investigators. All of them are criminal investigators. Ours are administrative investigators. And ours will never be criminal investigators unless there's huge legislative changes that are not in place at the present time. So everyone that's in Schedule C at this moment, every one of those are criminal in nature, and we're not. So I think that's what differentiates here, but we also, to make sure that we use the money, stretch it as far as we can stretch it across the agency, and we're going to do that.
Just out of curiosity, I know we've talked briefly about vacancies that we currently have. How many of those vacancies are within that enforcement arm of the board?
Enforcement or investigation?
Investigation.
0.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Caroline?
That's correct.
Thanks.
comments? I mean, I do think that in looking at the budget, we've looked to try to really be very good stewards, and I hope that y'all were as pleased as I on the LAR that through, you know, Ann's good works that, you know, we went from that 8 to 10 and looking at the staff. So hopefully what we were asking for is granted, so.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Very thorough.
Thank you very much for all of that information and all the work you did.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Megan, I think I'm turning it back over to you.
Yes. So we are going back, so this would be E13, and we are going back to discussing pharmacy technician training programs. And so for this one, staff would suggest putting language on the website that says, the Texas State Board of Pharmacy approves pharmacy technician training programs accredited by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists / Accreditation Council for Pharmacy Education. And so that's ASHP/ACPE, and then have a link to the accreditation list that they have. And so the statute, you know, requires us to publish a list of, you know, the approved programs, and so that's what that link would be there for, and that way, you know, it would be updated by them and, you know, stay current. There was a request, you know, to see what other states do, and so we had our wonderful legal interns look to other states and see if they could find anything relating to non-employer pharmacy technician training programs. And they identify ASHP, ACPE accreditation directly, you know, like staff suggestion would be, and some of them just say nationally accredited. And then there were a handful that provide their own standards, but in looking at those, they did not appear to be more robust than the ASHP, ACPE standards.
So this goes back to what we talked about earlier. So we would be then publishing the list. We keep the standards in place. And people that are looking to get a license will be able to go to the website and look for those, what the standards are and what those schools, what they look like. So are there questions, concerns, comments? Sorry, Shada, it's more work.
So are we saying that if you want to be a technician, you have to have?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No.
Have anybody have to do any of those programs? Okay.
No.
We're just saying if you do one, these are the ones that are accredited.
Yes.
Got it.
All right, Miss Megan, I believe you're going to take us to the next item.
Am I? Oh, I am. Okay, next we have E14, and this is discussion concerning patient counseling delegation. And so there was a question last time about whether it's statutorily prohibited or if it's in rules that a pharmacy technician cannot be delegated an offer for counsel. So the Pharmacy Act defines the practice of pharmacy as including providing patient counseling, and defines patient counseling as communication by a pharmacist of information as specified by board rule to a patient or caregiver to improve therapy by ensuring proper use of a drug or device. The Pharmacy Act leaves it to the board to determine the specifics of patient counseling. Board rules currently provide that counseling shall be provided on each new prescription. The rules also state that a pharmacist is not required to provide consultation when a patient or agent refuses consultation, and that the pharmacist must document the refusal. This means for new prescriptions, it is not an offer of counseling. The pharmacist must counsel, and then if the patient refuses to listen or engage in the counseling, the pharmacist must document that refusal. Having a technician offer the patient counseling with the pharmacist or ask the patient whether they have questions for the pharmacist is what staff refers to as technician screening and is currently a violation of the rules. The requirement for mandatory counseling on new prescriptions has been in place in Texas since January 1st, 1993. And prior to that, the requirement was only to offer patient counseling under the Federal Omnibus Reconciliation Act of 1990. So there's some background on it.
All right. And Rick, I think this came from a question of yours.
I mean, it's just clarification based on the other discussion we had about the in-person. I don't think reviewing that.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure if you
Yeah,
had any
no,
other
that was just
questions.
it. I think we settled that with the change in the in-person, but yeah, we definitely want to continue that process of consultation by the pharmacist given. Yeah.
All right, are there any questions? All right. All right, so next up is E15, and this came about through a request by Senator Perry. He asked that we look at operating hours and delivery of prescriptions by Class A pharmacies. So we're putting this on the agenda. I will turn it over to Tim, and I will remember that Jeff Lush had a comment that he would like to bring forward. So if you want to give a little bit more information. And
as I told y'all earlier, I had the honor and privilege of being invited to testify before the Senate Health Committee on June 26th. They asked me to come prepared with a 3-minute presentation on our response to the pandemic. So me and the team prepared 3 fantastic minutes of what the Board of Pharmacy had done in response to the pandemic. I held my shoulders back and proudly reported on everything that we had done and how proud we were of how we had handled things in the pandemic and made changes and licensing issues and enforcement issues and just everything. And then I finished. And then Senators Buckingham and Hall and Perry gave me an opportunity to answer their specific questions that had nothing to do with the pandemic. Welcome to Texas government. Senator Perry was very kind, and he and I have had 2 exchanges since that meeting, and we are friends, and we're going to be even better friends as we go down this road. But he gave me specific instructions at that gathering to either have it on this board agenda or come to his office and explain to him why it was not on the board agenda. So it is on your board agenda for general discussion for operating hours of pharmacy and delivery of prescriptions. I think he feels better and feels good with bringing it to our attention and putting me in my place at our June 26th gathering. But I also think that he knows realistically that life happens. And he was in a pharmacy in Lubbock that was closing early because of staffing issues, not having enough staff to keep pharmacies open, and he wants the pharmacy open when the patient needs service. I think all of us in a dream world would love for a pharmacy to be open at any time a patient needs service, but we also have X number of pharmacists that can work X number of hours, and when they're sick or when you don't have them to cover it, your option is to close or change your hours. He and I had those discussions, and he still wants pharmacists to be open. So that's your general background of where we were. Some of you were there and heard the exchange. He and I have had fantastic conversations since then, and in Tim's opinion, it's not the board's prerogative to tell a pharmacy when they can be open and when they can be closed. It's the board's prerogative to protect the citizens of Texas and to make sure that the best pharmacy service is being provided to the citizens of Texas when the stores are open. But I wanted y'all to have general discussion about hours of operation and delivery of prescriptions so that when he asks me, I can say, well, of course, the Board of Pharmacy had these discussions and this is what they talked about.
well, it's not just to fulfill his request.
Oh, absolutely.
It is
No,
a
no,
good
no.
discussion.
It's a good discussion to have, but I also want to be able to tell him, yes, we did have that discussion.
Well, I have a question kind of on that, and Julie, I think we talked about that the other day. When a pharmacy can't be open according to their listed regular scheduled hours, is there any notification process that they need to let the board know, especially if it's an extended period of time?
They do let us know. Many of them send list in to Lisa Wells and licensing, and she puts that in our system, then changes the hours of operation. So they are very, very good about letting us know. I mean, I know Rick's group has, I know Lauren's group has. I mean, several send me those lists in when they have to have a change of operation for whatever reason, staffing reason, just business practice, whatever. They do send us that in, and it goes into our system. Yes.
Okay, so what is a patient to do if they need their prescription filled and they can't get it transferred to another pharmacy because there's no pharmacist on staff? What?
Well, it's going to kind of depend upon whose business. If it's a multi-chain, which is what this is looking at, is for, or his question dealt with with chains or big boxes, is that interlinking that one pharmacy can pull over. So there is, portability of the prescription in those cases. It would not necessarily be the case in independent, but that wasn't really what his concern was or what he addressed.
But I think we all have that concern, Jenny. If you think about it, if a prescription comes in at 5:45 and you fill it, if Tim filled it at his pharmacy when I owned a pharmacy, if I fill it at 5:45 and I close at 6 and the patient needs it, it's filled at my pharmacy, and they can't get it till the next day, or in some cases, if it's 5:45 on Friday, it may be Monday. That's reality. I mean, that's life. I don't know that we as a Board of Pharmacy can change that. If you're a big box and you have interconnectivity, you might be able to reverse it out and fill it and do whatever, but I don't know that that's board prerogative. That's that's business practice. That's operating procedures, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I could add, Dave and Julie, that that's one of the advantages of our board rules, that if you have out-of-state phone support from pharmacists and non-resident pharmacies, if someone calls the phone number, they can get it pulled to somebody that's not within that organization. So there is some after-hours process because we have rules that allow us to do that if they're closed, or go to another location or whatnot. But it does put it in a spot. You definitely can't prepare for any last-minute stuff. Someone has a positive COVID test, or there's an issue that occurred at last minute, that would be a really inconvenience. But you do try to post things in advance. I think that's really the obligation we have, and also notify the board when that's a permanent change. Especially if you're going to have someone do an inspection or something, we need to make sure they're not coming when it's closed or something like that. So I think that does put a spot, though, to have mitigating processes when that does happen.
Well, and I do think too, and hopefully, I say this very hopefully, we're going to get to the point where we've got, less COVID cases. Hopefully we're getting immunizations up and herd immunity, and the situation that he's addressing or was concerned about is going to lessen and become hopefully a moot point. But I think an even better, kind of going and tag teaming with Rick is, if you look at Harvey. So if you look at Harvey, and I'll just, speak for my business and how this progressed. So every morning we would have a call to see who we had open, who we had staff, and every day I would send a list to the board of here's who I don't have. But at the same point, we had pharmacies far north, even as far as Dallas, because that, a lot of people evacuated. So we were transferring prescriptions, every day, so that those people did, as they had to evacuate, had access to those prescriptions. And of course, that's an emergency, so a lot of our emergency rules, start to fall into place. And all of that really helps with those situations. So I think that we've been proactive in some of the things that we've done to make sure that when, big events occur, that we do have things in place. It's those, the pharmacist has COVID, and so that partner's out, and then the next morning, that partner then has COVID, and it's 8:30 and you open at 9 o'clock, and you're then calling your relief pharmacist. So you're supposed to open at 9, and now you're opening at 9:45. That's where I think we see.
Did you want to have
challenges.
Jeff come up and?
Yes. So Jeff, you want to come in and make your statement?
All right. Thank you again, President Spear, Executive Director, board members, and staff. Jeff Lush, with President of Texas Federation of Drugstores, speaking on behalf of Texas Federation of Drugstores members. Do want to provide a few comments for your consideration on the discussion that's ongoing here regarding pharmacy operating hours. I'd like to start by saying we do understand the frustration of the senator. As you can imagine, the closure of a pharmacy during posted operational hours occurs only as a last resort. Pharmacies do diligently work to employ the right number of pharmacists so that if a pharmacist has to be gone due to illness, vacation, or other reasons, we have the person covered. The pandemic's certainly thrown a wrench into the best laid plans. Recently, APHA put out a survey in January indicating that during the pandemic, 27% of respondents had to temporarily close or decrease their operating hours due to staffing shortages. And of the respondents to that survey, 87% were community pharmacies. Staffing issues due to COVID illness have certainly affected pharmacy operations, just as they have all industries and healthcare fields. We've seen the prolonged impact of the pandemic on healthcare providers, with many changing careers or electing to retire, and for individuals seeking to go into healthcare to look at alternatives. Specifically speaking to the pharmacy technician workforce, candidates sitting for the PTCB exam during the last 6 months of 2021 decreased 20% nationally and 40% in Texas. So the pharmacy workforce wasn't immune to what many other industries are suffering from a shortage of workers. It is something that will correct itself in time, and I think all present understand that what we need rather than any type of mandate is the understanding that to operate within the law, to keep our patients and their patient safety as our priority, and to allow COVID-positive healthcare workers to stay at home. Unfortunately, there are going to be instances where pharmacies are not going to have the coverage to remain operational for regular hours. With our patients as our first priority, everyone is working diligently to fill the shortages and provide patients with timely access. Our pharmacists do play a critical role and have played a critical role in the pandemic. They've continued to keep pharmacies open and operating while administering millions of vaccines at pharmacies, immunizations events, and nursing homes. The commitment by pharmacists to be a solution for their patients has been nothing short of astounding. And in short, I just want to thank you, the members of the board and staff, for all that you've done and continue to do for pharmacy. And I also want to publicly say thank you to all the pharmacists in Texas that have gone above and beyond every day. Thank you.
I will wholeheartedly agree with that big thank you. Not for us, but for the pharmacists.
And I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for Jeff?
Thanks again
All
for
right.
your time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Rick, I have a question for you. When your pharmacies, I guess the ones that work in multiple levels, multiple stores, when you have a pharmacy that's closed in Amarillo or Dallas or whatever, does your phone system switch that over to, does it link to another pharmacy then you're in that area, or how's that work in your corporate world?
It depends on the situation. There are times where you can route a phone to another location, or it'll go to a central facility if there's a follow-up that's needed.
Okay.
A lot of times it's hard to predict where someone will want a phone call go to, but there is some options available for somebody. A lot of people don't exercise that, but it's available either through a central facility, call center in Orlando or Phoenix. The pharmacist will answer, and if someone needs something that's closed, they'll initiate a transfer to whatever pharmacy they want to because they have access to the system, but that's available.
Okay. But in this situation, he went to inside a pharmacy, is that?
And they were closing, and that was it. There was a line, they were closing while he was in line. And
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, he was seeing the frustration from patients that were in line.
Oh, okay.
He was fourth in line, and everybody in front of him had a specific request. Like, one of them was an immunization, and the pharmacy staff was short already. They were closing at 6, and an immunization was a difficult thing to get that night. But he saw the patient not get the service that he thought they should get, and then he was fourth back, and frustration.
Well, I understand his frustration. I mean, everybody wants what they want when they want it, right? But to everybody's points, there are limits to what people can do, and our role is to protect the citizens of Texas. So mandating that somebody be open from sometime to sometime, and then have a pharmacist have to work, 15 hours or something now because they have to work because we want them to be open and maybe don't have help, that's not gonna do anything for the people of Texas. It becomes a safety issue when we start forcing things to happen like that. So, I mean, I understand his frustration, but there are limits to what a person can do.
Well, and very hopefully, we can, we'll get on the other side of this and not have these issues.
Thank you for having this discussion.
All right. So E16 is going to be Shada, which, we've said this often. I mean, she's like the magic behind all of this electronic stuff and the web and the video of the building. And so huge thanks for all you do and all the people that
absolutely.
assist you.
And thank you all so much for having me. I wanted to give a quick update on the course development for the Pharmacy Owners course. Excuse me. This course is a comprehensive and more easily digestible look at the major regulations related to operating a pharmacy in Texas. And it's being developed with the expertise of our pharmacist outreach officer, Dr. Cynthia Hill, which she's a great resource. She knows a ton about our regulations. And we have completed part 1 of the course, and we're in the final stages of drafting part 2. And that should be finalized in the next few months, and it will be optimized for online learning through our e-learning vendor, which is eStrategy Solutions. And they've done a great job so far on part 1 with adapting the material to be engaging and interactive, because regulations can sometimes not be engaging and interactive. So I think this will be a really great educational addition to our catalog, also a great resource for the board and its constituents. And the last thing, we want to invite you to take a look at part 1, if you'd like to, if you have time, and actually work through the course so you can see what our users will see. And our vendor has provided a voucher code for the board members, so you can access part 1 before it goes completely live and public facing. And I'll be sending that voucher code and instructions on how to register for the course to Lily soon, and I think we should get that out to you later this week. And that's all I have for you, unless you have any questions.
So we're going to put out part 1, we're gonna put that out even though 2's not ready, is that what you're saying?
Not
No,
public
we're gonna-
facing.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna wait
Yeah,
till
it's for us
It's
to.
just for us.
Yeah, so you'll have access to it, and it's all basically live, but it's just behind a curtain, basically, on our catalog.
And what's the estimated amount of time it should take to go through part 1?
It's quite extensive. It's about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna say like 4 hours or
No,
something.
no. The 2 parts together are between 3 and 4 hours.
It's very doable. It's a fantastic resource for pharmacists, pharmacy owners, non-pharmacist owners. We're excited that you as a board would have that as a resource. Shada thanked Cindy, but Shada needs as much thank you as Cindy does. They have tag teamed on this, and this was I think this was a suggestion by Board Member Lewis, that we needed some kind of resource for our pharmacists and pharmacy owners, and Shada and Cindy have done a fantastic job. So I've seen the framework, and I've seen the nuts and bolts and the pieces to make it happen, so I can't wait to see the actual product, and I encourage y'all to go on and look at that as well. But thank you, Shada, and thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
So when you do get that voucher, please go through and read it, because I do think this is going to be a huge and very beneficial resource for the those that are looking to open a pharmacy. So huge thanks to both of y'all.
And it will be, the intent is that this is elective for owners, or that it is a requirement prior to applying?
We cannot make it a requirement.
That's what I thought. Okay.
It will be elective, but then you as a board will also have it as a resource in case someone might need a reminder, a refresher, information source. There's so many times that we see, particularly non-pharmacist owners, that need what does it mean to be an owner? What is the requirement to be an owner? We as pharmacists often know that, but non-pharmacists sometimes don't realize everything it takes to be an owner, and that's what this course will be for.
That's
But
great.
it's very elective. We thought we could do the other, but we've been told no.
And then, but as a part of informal conferences, this could be where we steer people who have had some
Yes,
issues.
ma'am. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, it is now almost 11:50. We will go ahead and break for lunch. I'll ask the board, do you want to be back at, say, 12:30? Does that sound? All right, so at this point, we will adjourn until 12:30.